We are Natura & Co. 4 brands: Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop. 4 brands united in our commitment to life, who believe that we should all give back more than we take. 4 brands that know that the best business in the world is the one that is best for it. Because this planet and its people are suffering. Disease and drought, pollution and poverty. Humanity has stretched nature too far and demanded too much. It's time to stop talking and start acting. It's time to commit to life. To not just stop deforestation, but reverse it. To not just be carbon neutral, but net zero. To go beyond human rights and practice human kindness. To breathe life back into the lungs of the world and save the Amazon. To not just recycle, but regenerate. To come together for change. Because when we act as one, we act for us all. This is our commitment to life.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. Wherever you are in the world today, I hope you're feeling the warmth of some sunshine on your shoulders, either in reality or metaphorically. Thank you for joining us today to celebrate the first anniversary of Natura & Co.'s Commitment to Life for 2030 Sustainability Vision. My name is Charmian Love, and I am co-founder and activist in residence at B-Lab UK. As someone deeply connected to the B Corp movement, which just a few weeks ago welcomed B Corp number 4,000 to the community, I always appreciate an opportunity to learn alongside organizations that are committed to sharing best practices in their pursuit of business models which blend purpose with profit. Now, following the year we've just experienced, I think we can all agree that it's never been more important for companies to step up in the global efforts to create an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economy for all people and the planet. So when Natura & Co. invited me to join them today, I didn't miss a beat in saying yes. As the world's largest certified B Corp, they have demonstrated that even when you're an enormous multinational, multi-channel business in more than 100 countries, you can still successfully balance environmental and social goals with economic ones. And their companies have literally been doing this for decades. Now, why is the event today so important, you may be thinking? Well, because the transparency that you will hear today, the highlights and the challenges, is a really critical factor for building better businesses. And as we embark on this learning adventure over the next couple of hours together, I'd like you all to hold 3 words at the top of your mind. They all start with a C, so hopefully that'll make it easier to remember. The first word is courage, the second is compassion, and the third is commitment. Courage is to think about how you can stretch further, dig deeper, really aim higher, and ultimately work together when facing these interconnected emergencies. Compassion is in how you consider the people around you, the citizens, the communities, and demonstrate care towards them. Care, that's a bonus C for you there. The third is commitment, and you'll hear about Natura & Co.'s 3 commitments to life. And we hope you will be inspired to create your own commitments and to take action to make them happen. Now, we're really keen to hear from you throughout this process and beyond. Right now, we're live streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and we'd love to hear any questions or reflections. So please speak up in the comment boxes. And we also have a dream team collating the questions and comments, which may be selected at the end of the event for some of our speakers to address. So thank you again for joining us. I can feel that special tingly feeling in my fingertips, which is always a sure sign that this is going to be a really electric time together. So without further ado, let's get this party started. Roberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charmian. We are so grateful to you for hosting our event. Hello, everybody. I'm Roberto Marques, Executive Chairman and Group CEO of Natura & Co. Thank you so much for joining us today. Natura & Co. unites 4 like-minded brands, Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop, that are unique in identity and spirit, but are connected by the belief that business can and should be a force for good. We are the 4th largest pure-play beauty group in the world, touching more than 200 million consumers every day. 1 year ago, we launched our sustainability vision for 2030 that we call Commitment to Life, an ambitious plan to address some of the world's most urgent and pressing challenges, focused on addressing the climate crisis and protecting the Amazon, ensuring human rights, inclusion and diversity across our business, and embracing circularity and regeneration by 2030. We have also committed to major undertaking of becoming net zero on GHG emissions 20 years ahead of the UN pledge on scope 1, 2, and 3, which will require innovation and collaboration across the entire end-to-end supply chain, including downstream and upstream emissions. In the 12 months that have followed, and again, the backdrop of a global pandemic and unprecedented social unrest, we have been building the foundations to ensure we meet our targets. We have connected with business leaders, governments, and civil society to explore how we can work together to create a fairer, more sustainable world for everyone. Finally, we are working to consolidate initiatives that, although they are incredibly valuable, are maybe still too fragmented. We share this update in the spirit of transparency, in the spirit of collaboration. As the world's largest certified B Corporation, we work tirelessly across our businesses to meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance. We're also legally accountable to balance our profit with our purpose, an all-stakeholders approach, which is why we'll always report our social and environmental performance with the same transparency as we do our financial performance. With only 25% of Fortune 500 companies committing to become carbon neutral by 2030, it is clear that the world has still a long way to go. The climate crisis is the defining challenge of our time, and will be incumbent upon the private sector to step up and push for change in order for the goals of the Paris Agreement to become a reality. Social justice will continue to be an aspiration unless businesses step up to ensure diversity and inclusion throughout every aspect of their structure and their entire network. Today, you hear from our colleagues across Natura & Co. on the progress we have made and the challenges we have faced over the past 12 months since the Commitment to Life was launched last year. We're also honored to be joined by leading global experts who share their learnings and best practice insights. We'll hear from Andrea Alvares, Chief Brand Innovation, International and Sustainability Officer at Natura, and Tasso Azevedo, father of the Brazilian Forest Service and now head of MapBiomas, the leading monitor of the Amazon. We also have the privilege to have with us also the co-founder of Natura and Conservation for the Amazon, Guilherme Leal. In the panel, you hear the learnings and insights on how can we all protect the Amazon. Then, Paula Fallowfield, Chief Human Resources Officer, and Jade, Fraser, Head of Diversity and Inclusion for Natura & Co., will then share the group's progress on equitable pay and insights into a new initiative that will deliver on our goal to ensure we have at least 30% inclusion of underrepresented groups in management roles by 2030. We're especially honored to be joined also by Sanda Ojiambo, CEO of the United Nations Global Compact, who I also have the privilege to be part of, who will share how her organization is helping other businesses ensure equal representation across their network and what business leaders can learn from one another. Louise Scott, Natura & Co. Group R&D Capability and Vice President of Avon R&D and Sustainability, will host a session sharing insights on circularity and regeneration from 3 of our brands, led by Roseli Mello from Natura, Roberta Roesler from The Body Shop, and Catarina Odeia from Aesop. We are honored to also welcome in our last session leaders of 4 organizations we are proud to call partners and allies in a discussion of why it is critical for governments and business communities to work together to build an agreement to protect nature. For this, we welcome Akasha Khatri, Head of Nature Action Agenda at the World Economic Forum, Florence Gentil, Managing Director of the One Planet Business for Biodiversity Coalition, Rick Lojenga, Executive Director at the Union for Ethical Biotrade, and Eva Zaibey, Executive Director of Business for Nature. But first, let's hear from Natura & Co. Silvia Lagnado, Sustainable Growth Officer, Marcelo Behar, our Sustainability and Group Affairs Vice President, and Keyvan Macedo, Sustainability Director, for a progress update on our goals. Over to you, Silvia.
Thank you, Roberto. We're very proud to share our first year progress with you all today. Our original intent was to launch our 2030 goals at the end of 2019, after working on it between Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop for quite a while. Then, as we prepared to welcome Avon into the group, we decided it was best to pause just a little so we could integrate our new reality with Avon into our collective vision. So Avon became part of Natura & Co. in early 2020, just before we're all hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, with all the fear and shadows that it brought into the world. We decided to move forward, despite all that, with a collective vision, all 4 companies, and launched Commitment to Life a year ago in June 2020. Against this shocking backdrop, it felt that our plan was more urgent and necessary than ever, and we decided to go ahead. Our Commitment to Life consists of 3 pillars. The first one is to tackle the climate crisis and protect the Amazon. The second is to defend human rights and be humankind. And the third pillar is to embrace circularity and regeneration. For these goals to be meaningful, we created 31 detailed targets in total. And for anyone who'd like to learn more, there'll be a downloadable fact sheet available on our website, naturaco.com, after this event. We want to walk you now through some of the highlights of the progress that we've made on each pillar. To start, I'm going to hand over to Keyvan, who will talk about our first commitment to address the climate crisis and to protect the Amazon. Over to you, Keyvan.
Thank you, Silvia. At Natura & Co., we have a bold commitment to become net zero across our entire value chain by 2030. To achieve this goal, we have pledged to set science-based targets across scopes 1, 2, and 3 by 2022. Our 4 brands are at different stages of measuring their carbon footprint. At the support them, we are working with Carbon Trust, an expert organizations supporting business in their ambitions to achieve a sustainable and low carbon future. But before we can measure our progress, it has been essential for us to understand the baseline where we are working from. So, we are consolidating our organization's footprint for the scopes 1, 2, and 3 to determine our greenhouse gas inventory baseline to ultimately set and approve science-based target in line with 1.5 degrees trajectory. Currently, our GHG emissions are estimated at 2 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Last year, Natura became a co-founder of Transform to Net Zero, together with other 10 global companies, including Microsoft, Nike, Danone, and Daimler Chrysler. Our goal is to lead by examples to enable all business to decarbonize their supply chains. Let me share one of the examples here. For COP26 later this year, we aim to show the path towards end-to-end decarbonization on the plastic value chain as a proof point. We are also now patrons of UN Global Compact's Climate Ambition Accelerator that aims to foster collective efforts on global common goal on climate change. When it comes to the Amazon, we developed a unique business model for the last 20 years, and we will expand it, because our future will be a reflection of the rainforest's destiny. Without it, and the extraordinary carbon function it has, we will not be able to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Our live panel with the leaders of Business for Nature, One Planet Business for Biodiversity, World Economic Forum, and Union for Ethical Biotrade will be talking more about what can we do to build an agreement on nature and to help tropical forests later in our session today. Now, let me hand over to you, Marcelo.
Thank you so much, Keyvan. Our approach as a group is always guided by our purpose, to nurture beauty and relationships for a better way of living and doing business. This is reflected throughout the commitment to life, but especially in the second pillar, which focus on our goals to align our companies to defend human rights and to be more humankind to everyone. Later in the session, you'll hear from Paula Fallowfield, our Chief HR Officer, and Jade Fraser, Head of Diversity, Inclusion, and Engagement, on the progress we have made on our commitments addressing equitable pay and our work to ensure more inclusion and diversity across the workforce. I'd like to take a minute to share some insights into some of our other key targets. One of our boldest goals takes its inspiration from Natura, whose innovative work tracking its social value dates back to 2014, when it started to measure and disclose the Human Development Index of its network of consultants. As a group, we are expanding this program to track how we can create social value, well-being, and development for our network of consultants and representatives in our 10K markets, reaching more than 5 million people. With clear measurement and targets in place, we are committing to deliver an annual update of our progress in this area. Last year, we determined how we will track the earnings, education, health, and digital capabilities of our network. And now we are building the methodology and data. We hope to get our first results publicly within 2 years. We are also working hard to ensure that our critical supply chains are fully sustainable, and we are building to develop detection and correction plans to remediate any human rights infringements that we identify. We will be disclosing the data and our position as a group in the second semester this year. In 2020, we committed to deliver a living wage or above to our people in more than 100 countries by 2023. We have set a clear baseline, which has allowed us to understand where we currently stand. For every adult in our network, our current percentage is 96%, 4% behind where we want to be. We are confident that we will reach our goal ahead of 2023. Finally, in 2020 alone, we invested $95 million in social causes, including initiatives to combat COVID-19 and the rise of domestic violence through a powerful global campaign called Isolated, Not Alone. This follows the guidance we gave last year on our expectation regarding investment in key causes. We expect to disclose within the next 2 years what social value we have created. Let's now hear more from Silvia on the progress we've made to embrace circularity and regeneration by 2030. Silvia.
Thank you, Marcelo. Hello again, everyone. So this is the pill about all our products. In the spirit of challenge, a status quo, and wanting to go beyond the limitations that exist today, we've committed to fully embracing circularity and regeneration across our 4 businesses by the end of this decade. And we know it won't be easy, and we don't yet have all the answers, but we're determined to finding them. Product packaging in particular currently accounts for more than 1/3 of our carbon emissions. So to put it simply, packaging is our biggest challenge in our path to become net zero. Whilst 81% of our packaging material today is already reusable, recyclable, compostable, we're aiming for 100% by 2030. But of course, there's more than that. We need to radically reduce the amount of packaging material that we use, and importantly, ensure that what is reusable is actually reused. When it comes to ingredients, we have a little clearer path. On formula biodegradability, for example, we are at 93% and clearly on track to get to 95% or more by 2030. And to ensure our success on these product-related goals, we've decided to significantly increase our resources on innovation, leveraging not only the talent across the group, but also developing different ways of working with much more cross-industry collaboration. But internally, through a mechanism that we call the Innovation Network of Excellence, INEX, members of our research and development teams representing a wealth of talent across Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop have already come together to collaborate on important projects and to share best practices. We've also committed as one of our goals to invest $100 million on regenerative solutions over the next 10 years. And in fact, later in the event, you're going to hear from our R&D leaders who'll be sharing some of the regenerative solutions already at work across our business. In this decade of action to tackle climate crisis, we must come together and challenge ourselves to find solutions that give back more than what we take. And that's our working definition of regeneration. Now, back to you, Char.
Hi again, everyone. Well, we're already hearing that many of you are making some amazing comments and putting some questions in on the platforms, which is great. So this is just a reminder that before we move into our next session, please, we invite you to ask your questions, put your comments in the below boxes as you listen in. And at the end of the event, we're going to close out with a question and answer session with some of our speakers. Now, as a company with its roots firmly in Latin America, Natura has been dedicated to developing sustainable economic alternatives for the Amazon region for 20 years. Let's now hear from 3 passionate advocates for the Amazon and their insights into what it will take to address the climate crisis and create a path to protect the Amazon. This session will be hosted by Andrea Alvares, the Chief Brand and Sustainability Officer for Natura, with Guilherme Leal, co-founder of Natura and co-chairman of Natura & Co., and Tasso Azevedo, the social entrepreneur and leading global forestry expert. Over to you, Andrea, Guilherme, and Tasso.
Thank you, Char. It's great to have you with us today. It's my great pleasure to be chairing the panel on the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest is the largest in the world and home to 10% of the planet's biodiversity. Its capacity to absorb greenhouse gas emissions also makes it a fundamental tool in mitigating climate change. However, in recent years, due to droughts and deforestation, the Amazon forest has become at best a net emitter. This has alarming global consequences as climate change and biodiversity loss are 2 of the 5 main risks threatening the global economy, according to the World Economic Forum. All numbers related to the forest are superlative. The Amazon biome is present in 9 countries in Latin America, where Natura & Co has its headquarters and an important part of its activities. It occupies 40% of the Brazilian territory and could provide an immense opportunity for the country to lead global efforts towards a low-carbon economy. As a company, we are well aware of the challenges of having a more sustainable business model in the region. We're also proof, however, that it is possible. Since 2010, we have invested more than 2 billion reais, or close to $400 million in the region, as we establish relationships with 34 communities and over 7,300 families. Innovation is a key driver of our presence in the region, either by helping us turn biodiversity ingredients into amazing products or by developing new agricultural solutions, such as the agroforestry system for the production of palm oil. There are many more opportunities involving biodiversity, conservation, and environmental regeneration. We must take advantage of the fact that the Amazon is part of the global debate now to promote the development of an economic model based on the biodiversity or bioeconomy. If well planned, this movement will represent a major development opportunity for Brazil and the region, driving competitiveness, real gains in conservation, and environmental regeneration and improved quality of life. Unfortunately, we're still far away from that reality. To this day, the region's development model is still based on extractives, large commodities, and mining. Trade and non-timber forest commodities represent around 0.05% of the Brazilian GDP. Global biodiversity supply chain markets are valued at 200 billion per year, with Amazon exports currently only representing 0.2%. Deforestation in the Amazon continues to beat historical records and is one of the greatest obstacles to the region's development. To discuss this and other issues, I have the great pleasure of welcoming 2 esteemed guests, Tasso Azevedo, consultant and social entrepreneur in the field of forests, sustainability, and climate change, and a longtime friend of Natura, and Guilherme Leal, co-founder of Natura, co-chairman of the board of Natura & Co, and long-term champion of sustainability, and more recently, through the consultation for the Amazon. Gentlemen, we know that the Amazon is no longer a concern only for environmentalists. What are the challenges facing the Amazon today in relation to deforestation and environmental conservation? Tasso, how about we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Guilherme. It's a pleasure to be with you in this panel. So let's say like this. I think the Amazon is a little bit on a kind of a crossroads. So after we have this long period of declining between 2004 and 2012, the deforestation is growing back and have exploded in the last 2 years. In May, for example, the alerts that the Spatial Agency in Brazil provide detect over 1.3 thousand square kilometers of deforestation in the Amazon, which is by large margin the highest number in this period of the year, like May, since the monitoring starts in 2004. And the problem is that the forest fires that we see in the Amazon are intrinsically linked with deforestation. In this region, the natural fires, it's not like an event that you would see normally. It's a very rare event. So forest fires in this area is an effect of the human-induced fires that recently, on areas that have been recently deforested, and as part of the process to convert those areas into pasture. Then the fire escapes from those areas inside the forest, causing the heavy degradation that amplifies actually the impact of deforestation. But what is alarming is that deforestation is growing twice as faster in the protected areas and indigenous lands than outside. Over 98% of deforestation that we had last year has at least one evidence of illegality, and 6-7% of those happens on private property or land that is under the domain of private owners. So despite of this reality, only about 5% of the area that were clear-cut in the last 2 years have been charged with fines and were seized with an embargo to stop deforestation. So there are, major pressures that are crashing the forests in the Amazon, like 3 of them. So illegal mining, the illegal logging, and the conversion of forests into pasture and farming. The illegal mining is particularly brutal, not only because of the loss of biodiversity that it's causing, but also because it's contaminating water, spreading disease, and bringing violence to indigenous people. When we analyze what happens with the land after we have deforestation, 63% of the land is turned into degraded pasture. 23% is abandoned and is kind of regenerating. And only 14% is being used for what we could say is like a productive activity, like agriculture or urban areas. Clearly, we don't need to convert any new hectare of forests in order to develop the Amazon region. We already have clear-cut 20% of the Amazon and degraded another 20% at least. And so the consequence of this is an immense emission of greenhouse gases and a decrease on the rainfall in Brazil. So I think it's time for us to revert this trajectory, because we run on a risk of entering a self-feeding process of degradation that might be irreversible, and that will be like the worst scenario.
No, absolutely. And we all have seen the data and we've seen the numbers, and it really frightens and frustrates us all. But we've tried to convert that frustration into action. And that is why we've teamed up on an effort together with MapBiomas and Natura, considering our commitment to help end illegal deforestation by 2025 as a way to reverse that tipping point and foster development models that actually regenerate and transfer social progress in the process as well. So, Tasso, can you tell us more about this joint initiative?
Yeah, so this is something that we have been thinking and working in this partnership with the MapBiomas, which is a platform that brings together scientists from NGOs, startup techs, and universities, together with Natura and Infoamazonia, which is a journalist website dedicated to information about the Amazon. To bring together, to work on a portal in which we can gather data and indicators related to deforestation and also regeneration and conservation, with specific emphasis in the Amazon region. So the idea here, the purpose, is to engage government, the private sector, the civil society, and local organizations to support the fight against deforestation and promote conservation. So there'll be like 3 major areas on this website. One part is like just gathering all the information we have about the deforestation and regeneration in one single place where it's very easy for everyone to find out what's going on and what could be the priority areas to act on, etc. The second thing is an area where we can get all the news and information about what is happening in the region in a way that is geo-referenced, so you can find out what it's happened, where and when in the region, to get better information to act. And the third area is a kind of a clearinghouse of what are people doing to fight deforestation and how can you engage with that. So who is doing the good examples? Who are the people, the institutions, and the projects, initiatives that are moving towards this common goal of stopping deforestation and promoting the restoration and conservation in the Amazon? So in a nutshell, that's the purpose of this portal. It's kind of creating a movement for changing what it's today is a kind of a fate for the Amazon to be something that is kind of a new vision, optimistic vision of changing the reality there during this decade.
No, and I have to tell you that we've been looking together at the data and the landing page, and as this thing is coming to life, and it is impressive, and it does give me immense hope. So it's a pleasure to be engaged in this initiative together with you, really. So Guilherme, now let me turn to you. Tasso has talked us through the numbers and the data at length, but also attempts to bring various stakeholders together. Having founded Concertation for the Amazon, or Concertação as we call it, an NGO that seeks to foster not only dialogue but collective action, can you tell us more about this entire experience?
For sure. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Tasso. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. We have been involved, as you probably most of you know, with Amazon for the last 20, 25 years, as Natura, as a citizen, Brazilian citizen, and as part of the third factor as well. The problem and the opportunities with Amazon are huge, as you have described, you and Tasso has described it. We have, Amazon is fundamental for Brazil, is fundamental for South America and the 9 countries that shares the Pan-Amazonia. It's important to the whole world. And it's a highly complex challenge to deal with. And we, with our experience in trying to produce some increment, some model of sustainable development in the Amazon for this, along this more than 20 years, we are more than sure that nobody alone can deal with this systemic problem. If we want to really find a north to deal with Amazon, to keep Amazon alive, to put Brazil and South America in the world with Amazon, and to give the services that Amazon provides to share with the whole world, we need to involve a lot of different people. As you know, also that we have more than 25 million people living there, just in Brazilian part, and they have not a good life. They are living in poverty, and they need to access prosperity, but not the kind of prosperity or the production of wealth that has been done so far. Tasso knows much better than myself the process of deforestation and producing the empty space. We have a lot of land without no production, nothing of wellness being created or shared. To deal with this, in the beginning of 2019, we were concerned about the alerts that the deforestation was growing in a really fast way through more than 5 years, 6, 7 years, but growing, the curve going very, very up. And we decided to invite different stakeholders, business leaders, political leaders, community leaders, people from the most different sectors in industry, mining, agribusiness, and so far, to talk about, to share what could be done for to create a sustainable Amazon. And this has been the movement since then. We started in the middle of 2019, and now we are more than 200 leaders, different leaders, cultural leaders, indigenous leaders, business leaders, as I said, trying to share experiences, and these tools that Tasso has mentioned are fundamental. Information, it's key to understand the different Amazons that we have inside the big Amazon. We have many different Amazons with many different challenges, and if we want to deal with them to produce a low carbon economy, to produce a sustainable way of development, we need to share and to bring to the table and to discuss the different versions, the different visions that different stakeholders have of Amazon. So we are involved deeply in this process. We are very happy. We didn't find the solutions. There is no one solution. There are many experiences that could be developed, but we need to convey on a north, the direction, the right direction, and to bring people to really make their best to change the situation, that this very, very threatening situation that Tasso has described for us.
No, fantastic. And it's incredible to have your leadership in this agenda for such a long time and continuing to exercise it, because we know that it's the need to foster dialogues between various entities that we will find these solutions. And you are a very important voice in not only speaking, but putting people at the table for the dialogue to happen. And like you said, it's a systemic problem. It won't be easy to resolve. There are ways forward, not just one path. And Concertação, I think, is already playing a major role in starting to create those agendas going forward.
Can I make
I'd love to.
small?
Yeah, of course. Yes, Tasso.
Yeah, I'm just thinking now while Guilherme was speaking, I think there is something very crucial on this movement of the Concertação, because normally when we saw a business dealing with the Amazon, when they see all the problems, the first idea that comes to mind is like, I need to avoid the Amazon, right? Because the Amazon is a problem. So let's avoid. We don't want to have products or anything from the Amazon that will cause problems in my... And I think what this movement is showing is the totally different approach, which is, okay, we have a problem, we have to engage with the problem. Like we have to engage with the Amazon if we want to solve the problem. I think this is absolutely brilliant and different from what we have in the past. And I think it's an invitation not for the Brazilians, but I think it's also an invitation for people around the globe, like don't avoid. Like we have a problem in the Amazon and we need the engagement of everyone to help to solve the problem. I think Concertação for me is this, like how to engage.
Great, Tasso. Your contribution is fantastic. That is, the opportunities that we have and that is not known yet are fantastic. So come to deal with the problem and to identify opportunities that could be shared with the local population and to keep alive the forest are fantastic. And consultation, to be honest, I am very proud and happy when I saw so many different faces in our monthly meetings, because this shows very well this novelty, this thing that is much different people being involved with Amazon. And so I think we nurture hope when we saw this kind of movement.
I think that's a great a note from which I will just start closing our panel. I would like to sit with both of you all afternoon to talk about it, all day actually, but we have to move on. And I was just inspired by your comment, thinking that when we engage with different stakeholders, we find solutions in the most unexpected places. And we wanted to bring here the example of the palm oil, which is usually widely recognized as a villain in cosmetics and in conservation. But when you change the mindset and you shift the way we plant and treat the ingredient, we can actually identify new ways of producing palm oil that are actually regenerative. And that's what we've done with our agroforestry model in the Amazon, which has for more than 10 years now proven that there are alternative solutions. And we'd like to share this video with everyone before we leave. So thank you, Guilherme. Thank you, Tasso, for your inspiration. And it's wonderful to be with you always. Let's watch the video.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Earth's forests, more than just trees, an entire symbiotic ecosystem, 400 million years of joint plant and animal evolution, creating a complex balance where every organism has a role. It's a system of life designed to function as one. But during 11,000 years of farming, rather than embrace the forest, humans have decimated it, clearing it for fields, polluting the land with pesticides, and planting single crops. At Natura, we saw that farming needed to evolve. Embracing 400 million years of forest evolution, we began the Palm AFS project to create agroforestry, a system that plants not just one crop, but many, growing palm, the andiroba tree, the acai tree, and many more together. A new way of farming, a new way to sustainably grow and extract palm oil, a better way to capture carbon and diversify our farmers' income. What began as 18 hectares grew to 60 and will keep growing as we work to make Natura's palm oil even more sustainable. This is a new future. Without fertilizers, without pesticides, without deforestation, and with reduced emissions. Because to regenerate the world, we must replant it.
Wow, amazing. It's so great to see this powerful example of one of the many projects Natura & Co. is involved in. And if you want more information on Planamata, check out the comments. You can download the fact sheet with all the information from naturaandco.com. Now, if we're to build an inclusive, equitable, and regenerative economic system, we must address issues affecting both people and the planet. We know the world and business has a long way to go to address the inequalities that challenge diversity and inclusion. You'll now hear from Natura & Co.'s experts, Paula Fallowfield, Chief HR Officer, and Jade Fraser, the Head of Diversity, Inclusion, and Engagement, on the progress they have made and the challenges they faced in the first year of working towards their commitment to life goals. You'll then hear from global expert Sanda Ojiambo, the CEO of UN Global Compact, who's going to share some really valuable insights for business leaders on how companies can become more inclusive and some of the best practices that will be helpful to the business community. Now, remember, keep on asking your questions, keep on commenting on these channels on what you've been hearing. We're so excited to be in conversation with you at the end of this event. Now, over to you, Paula, Jade, and Sanda.
Hi, everyone. Absolute pleasure to be here. So I'm speaking to you today about our second pillar of commitment to life, which is defending human rights and being humankind. So it's been a really interesting journey for us over the last year, and actually a little bit before that. But let me talk you through a couple of things that are top of my mind. First, on the equitable pay. We've been looking in two areas. The first one has been living wage. We started that a little bit before last year, but we're making great progress, and all of our businesses are focused right now on driving that gap down for living wage. We should be able to reach that target really soon within our commitment. The second has been our gender equitable pay area. And in that area, there's an interesting figure out there. The World Economic Forum has predicted that it's going to take 257 years to close the economic gender pay gap. Pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Well, we're not going to do it. We're taking the bull by the horns, and we're going to try and get there a little bit sooner. So I'm pleased to report that last year was a really important year for us in looking at this data. We worked with Mercer, an external alliance. We did some quality assurance work. We looked at methodology. And as we started to work through this, we recognized that there's two different ways in looking at this gender pay gap: the explained gap and the unexplained gap. The explained gap comes out and tells us that we're literally at a raw gap of 13%, right? And within our industry, that's actually not too bad. However, when you take into account things like geography, things like role profile, we're actually sitting just below 1%. So we're really pleased with that, and we're going to make an effort to close that this year. So I think that tells you that the World Economic Forum is a little bit outpaced with their target. Let's challenge it. Okay, looking beyond those pay matters that I just talked about, both living wage and the gender pay gap, we want to talk a little bit about inclusion and diversity. And we're working really hard to deliver on these targets. A truly inclusive workforce not only focuses on our balance of male and female, but also on our culture. But let me talk to you a little bit about what we've done to make sure we're hitting our second goal within this target, which is female representation. So across our workforce, we have a workforce of 68% women and 32% men. If I isolate this and just look at our management levels, we're actually coming in with 53% female leaders and 47% male. So we're doing a fantastic job in this area, and I'm really thrilled we're hitting these numbers. However, we can't rest on our laurels. We've got to keep on top of it with recruitment, with turnover. We've got to make sure that we maintain this great balance, okay? Now, finally, we know this is not the only subject. Gender is not the only aspect of diversity and inclusion. A key goal of Commitment to Life was our ambition to work towards 30% inclusion of our underrepresented groups. And this is across all of our management levels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Jade Fraser, who is our head of diversity for Natura & Co., to talk a little bit more in depth about this other but very, very relevant factor. Jade?
Thank you, Paula. To reiterate, gender is only one component of inclusion and diversity. And this is why we are working towards 30% inclusion of underrepresented groups at a management level, taking into account 6 factors: ethnicity, socioeconomically disadvantaged, sexual diversity, gender identity, and physical or mental disability. We believe that for Natura & Co. to be the best beauty group for the world, we must be the most inclusive. Through our commitment to life, we endeavour to raise the baseline for inclusion, diversity, and belonging, not only within our industry, but across the world. We recently founded a new diversity, inclusion, and belonging strategy, bringing together the 4 brands' inclusion initiatives, fueled by their origins of activism and social impact. The strategy spans the associate and customer lifecycle and will be led by our newly appointed diversity and inclusion leaders across the 4 of our brands, overseen by myself as the first dedicated head of diversity and inclusion. It gives us the opportunity to create a truly diverse organisation, thereby improving the outcomes and experiences of our associates and customers alike. This marks Natura & Co.'s first holistic end-to-end approach to strategic performance in this space, through which we hope to leverage the power of our collective insights, experience, and realities to work towards a common goal. Our plan is to create a workforce reflective of the societies in which we operate. So our first step is understanding the demographic composition of these regions. Our work to capture sensitive personal data in line with data protection laws and anonymity has come with significant global, technical, and legal challenges. As a result, we are reviewing what alternative methods are open to us to collect the desired data, navigating the current restrictions whilst also ensuring that we uphold the highest levels of compliance. We are taking a phased approach, which allows our people to come on this journey with us. Our hope is to create a blueprint for other organisations who endeavour to also access their own data. as we believe that to elevate all people through diversity, inclusion and belonging, we must choose collaboration over competition. Our particular focus regions are Brazil, the UK and Australia, where our 4 brands are headquartered. In the UK, we now know that, according to the most recent publicly available data, 86% of the population in England and Wales are white ethnic, 7.5% are Asian, 3.3% are Black, 2.2% are mixed ethnicity, and 1% belong to other ethnic groups. When it comes to data on our UK workforce, in addition to the data on the Australian population and workforce, the privacy-related challenge mentioned is causing significant difficulties. We have no doubt that these difficulties are shared by other responsible businesses endeavouring to obtain similar data, and one which many businesses will encounter in the future. We understand that there is a balance that needs to be reached, whereby businesses are able to accurately measure diversity data, whilst at the same time protecting personal information. We don't have the answer yet, but it makes it even more important that we pave the way here to ultimately enable the creation of genuinely end-to-end inclusive companies. In Brazil, on the other hand, we now understand the demographic composition, not only of the population, but also of our workforce. 56% of the population are Afro-descendants, and 42.7% are white ethnic, and below 2% are indigenous and Asian. On a preliminary study conducted in Natura & Co. Latin America, we understood important data on where we are. Natura's Brazilian population consists of 31.5% Afro-descendants, 64% white ethnic, and just below 3% indigenous and Asian. Avon's Brazilian population is 30% Afro-descendants, 67% white ethnic, and 1% indigenous and Asian. Isolating managers and above, for Natura, 7% are Afro-descendants, 85% are white ethnic, and 5% are indigenous and Asian. For Avon in this region, 6% of managers or above are Afro-descendants, over 90% are white ethnic, and almost 2% are indigenous and Asian. Turning to disabilities, we know that approximately 24% of the Brazilian population has some kind of disability, and the percentage of people with disabilities at Natura and Avon is 7.2% and 5% respectively. Comparing this with our UK and Australian data, it is clear that each brand is at a unique stage in the data collection journey. We are learning lessons from Natura in Brazil and are committed to sourcing the same level of data for our other regions and also to improve our current level of representation. Today, we acknowledge that there is important progress to be made here, yet fundamental to achieving diversity and inclusion goals is understanding precisely what work needs to be done. Now we are beginning to have a clearer picture on how far we need to move the needle. We can put the necessary plans in place to make that change. A concrete example is Avon Brazil, that has already set the goal of 30% of Black women in management positions by 2030. Speaking of change in the world, let's hear from a transformative global leader, Sanda Ojiambo, CEO of the United Nations Global Compact.
Dear friends, I'm Sanda Ojiambo, the CEO and Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact, and I'm grateful to Natura & Co. for convening this important dialogue on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Natura, as you know, has been part of the UN Global Compact since our founding in the year 2000. We're proud to work with you and all of our participating companies. Together, we're advancing responsible business practices and contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals. But while we've made some great strides towards the SDGs, persistent inequalities threaten to derail our progress, and gender inequality is one of the most glaring of all. And now the COVID-19 crisis has made the economic gender gap even wider, threatening to slow or reverse any progress we have made. And yet, embracing diversity and inclusion has proven to be not only the right thing to do, but also the smart thing to do. We know that companies with diversity targets, policies, and programs have better employee retention rates, more engaged workforces, and ultimately higher profits. The UN Global Compact is determined to help businesses move the needle on inclusion of marginalized racial and ethnic groups, people living with disabilities, and other disadvantaged and underrepresented groups, of course, including girls and women. Indeed, gender equality is one of the pillars of our new 3-year strategic plan and has long been one of our top priorities. In 2010, along with UN Women, we launched the Women's Empowerment Principles, the WEPs for short. And I encourage all companies to sign on to these 7 principles, which provide businesses with a roadmap to equality in the workplace. Last year, we also launched an initiative called Target Gender Equality through our country-based local networks. This accelerator program helps participating companies put the Women's Empowerment Principles into action by setting and meeting ambitious targets for women's representation and leadership in business. Target Gender Equality provides performance analyses, capacity building workshops, peer-to-peer learning, and a lot more. Its goal is to drive progress towards SDG 5.5, equal representation, participation, and leadership in business globally. The program is now in its 2nd year and has expanded to 44 countries with generous support from Natura as a patron. More than 300 businesses took part in round 1 of the Target Gender Equality program. 83% of them are creating new targets or revising existing targets on women's representation in top management and leadership. 68% are setting board-level targets. Target setting is crucial for progress on diversity and inclusion because what gets measured gets done. And I'd like to congratulate Natura on the Commitment to Life initiative and the targets that you have set to become a more equitable business, including having women in half of all your leadership positions, including board seats, by 2023. Friends, from a personal experience, I can attest that we urgently need such efforts. Early in my career, I often walked into a conference room and I was mistaken for the person assisting rather than leading the meeting. The assumption was, of course, that one of the men in the delegation or one of the men in the room was in charge. And such seemingly small encounters can actually have a profound impact on women, leading them to question their competency and their hard-earned success. This destructive dynamic must end. Our workforce should reflect the diverse world in which we live. Responsible business leaders can and must reset the tone from the top, because the evidence is clear. When women and other underrepresented groups are empowered, everybody wins. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Sanda, for your incredible insights. Now it's time to meet some of the leading scientists and sustainability experts from the 4 brands of Natura & Co. Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop, who it gives me great pleasure to say are all women. Rock on. Today, they'll be sharing insights into Natura & Co.'s commitments to embrace circularity and regeneration, and how this translates into tangible outcomes. I'll now hand it over to Louise Scott, Chief Scientific Officer at Avon and VP R&D for Natura & Co., who will first share what it's going to take to achieve full product circularity and deliver on the goals of the Commitment to Life vision. Then we're going to hear from Rosalie Mello, Global R&D Head at Natura, and Roberta Rosler, Global R&D Director at The Body Shop. And then Catherine O'Dea, General Manager, Global Strategy, Sustainability, and Growth for Aesop. Louise, it's over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to talk about the 3rd pillar of our commitment to life, to embrace product circularity and regeneration. So to achieve full product circularity and meet our net zero ambitions, we will need to search out new innovative solutions. We're committed to full circularity of our packaging and very close to full circularity on our formulas. More concretely, we have promised to, number 1, reduce our total packaging consumption, making 100% of our packaging recyclable, reusable, or compostable, and move to more recycled content. 2, use 95% renewable or natural ingredients in our products and over 95% biodegradable formulas. And then 3, increase investments and partnerships in regenerative solutions. To achieve these ambitions, we need to focus on making every stage of our product cycle more sustainable. From how and where we source the raw materials, how we design the formulas for our products, and the packaging we use to deliver this to the end consumer. We are committed to explore disruptive, regenerative solutions, which are those that capture more carbon than they emit, conserve and restore biodiversity and ecosystems, and generate quality of life through means that are just and inclusive for all. So I have the pleasure today of welcoming my dear colleagues, Catherine O'Day, Rosalie Mello, and Roberto Risler from 3 of our brands to talk to us through some of the disruptive solutions being used across our business to make progress on this journey. So starting with how Aesop is sourcing its sandalwood oil locally from Indigenous people in Australia, how Natura uses traditional knowledge and cutting-edge science to push the envelope on sustainable formulations that contribute to the conservation of the Amazon rainforest, and finally, how The Body Shop has used their experience in community trade sourcing to also rethink how we approach packaging. Now, let's hear from Catherine, Rosalie, and Roberta.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Aesop's partnership with Dutch Sandalwood Oils today. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, Aesop acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of the land and their deep spiritual connection to land, sea, and community. I pay my respects to all members of Aboriginal communities and their cultures across Australia, and to their elders past, present, and to their emerging leaders. We would like to thank the Indigenous communities whose wealth of knowledge has made this partnership possible. Western Australia is home to some of the highest quality sandalwood in the world. When Aesop began its search for a new source of sandalwood oil several years ago, quality was, naturally, an essential requirement. But quality alone wasn't enough. We sought an ethically sourced sandalwood oil that met our required scent profile, passed our vigorous quality metrics, and allowed for improved visibility of the sourcing, production, and supply process. After an extensive and diligent search, in 2018, Aesop partnered with Dutchen Sandalwood Oils, known as DSO. Dutchen is the Matu word for sandalwood. Based in Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, DSO is a sandalwood oil distillation company forged by an equal partnership between Dutchen custodians, Kudkabubba Aboriginal Corporation, and the founder of the Western Australian sandalwood plantations. It is wholly owned and controlled by traditional Indigenous communities. Sustainable development is at the heart of their business model. Their blended sandalwood oil is produced from new plantation trees, a sustainable and renewable source, and old-growth wildwood desert trees, which are held under native title by the traditional owners, which is sustainably harvested by the custodians of the land. To ensure culturally appropriate sandalwood harvesting, DSO works with the Matu and Wangi people, the traditional custodians of the land on which the sandalwood grows. Today, many signature Aesop products, such as Rejuvenate Intensive Body Balm, Moroccan Neroli Post-Shave Lotion, and our iconic Camellia Nut Facial Hydrating Cream contain this sandalwood oil. DSO is a leader in promoting Indigenous voices, employing sustainable business practices, and raising awareness of the impact of local climate change. Last year, the company was the first Australian recipient of the prestigious Equator Prize from the United Nations and the SEDEX Award for Best Collaborative Effort. Our partnership with DSO has been developed with the intention that it will be long-term, based on our shared values and commitment to positive social, economic, and environmental development. By understanding the social, ethical, and environmental risks involved in their practice, and how we can support their scaling, reinvestment, and growth, we have been able to ensure alignment with our supplier code of conduct and build supply chain transparency. We look forward to sharing more in the future about the development of this very special sourcing relationship with DSO. We are proud to follow Natura's experience of working with traditional communities in a regenerative way, through which we align our values and the transformative power of beauty.
"20 years ago, the Ecos line was born, and with it Natura showcased to the world a revolutionary idea, that it was possible to preserve the Amazon rainforest and its traditions through cosmetics, using solutions which make conservation of the forest more economically attractive than destroying it. Today, 20 years on, by combining traditional knowledge and science, Natura works with more than 7,000 families in 34 communities across the Amazon region. And with this, Natura contributes to the conservation of 2 million hectares of forest. In the past year, we have seen the devastating effects of illegal deforestation and man-made forest fires in the region. But we also have been inspired by the forest's capacity for rebirth and regeneration. It is in areas of great deforestation that were able to use cutting-edge science and local knowledge to study and observe the Tucumán palm, which, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, is able to resist the fires and flourish post-devastation, converting unproductive and degraded areas into new orchids. The new Ecos Tucumán line has a high percentage of Tucumán butter and oil. It's made with 98% of natural origin ingredients, are silicone-free, vegan, and made with 100% PET, post-consumption recycled packaging material, while also offering refuel alternatives. Again, more than leading beauty and cosmetic products, it represents an expression of our 2030 sustainability vision, celebrating our commitment to life. Nature's own mechanism of regenerating itself, the Tucumán in turn provides powerful compounds that replenishes the skin while at the same time providing economic benefits for the local community, turning all of us into guardians of the forest.
The Body Shop is famous for many things. If I had to select just 3, it would be our activist voice, our community fair trade program, and our body butters. But today I would like to talk about the last 2. So our latest body butters relaunch brings to life our most sustainable practices and represents what we are trying to achieve throughout Commitment to Life sustainability goals. The Body Shop launched the first body butters in 1992. Today, these iconic moisturizers are loved so much that they are sold every 3 seconds around the world. The new and improved body butters are vegan, certified by the Vegan Society, and they are made with at least 95% natural origin ingredients, including handcrafted community fair trade shea butter from Ghana. By enriching our formulas with shea butter, we can help to provide a fair income for more than 700 women from 11 different villages. The shea butter is handcrafted using an 18-stage process of a traditional technique, which were passed on from mother to daughter for generations. The Circularity and Regeneration pillar has a significant investment area for the Body Shop. It's one of the most challenging targets for our business. In 2020, we continue to review our product ingredients and our formulas to help us to reduce their ecological footprint. But it's not enough. We are also taking actions on collection programs such as the Body Shop partnership with Plastic for Change. For the body butter relaunch, we really raised the bar on how to increase the impact of our community fair trade program. The new body butter The new butter packaging, for instance, is made with aluminum lids and 100% recycled plastic. This includes community fair trade recycled plastic collected from the streets of India. Let's face it, there is an abundance of plastic in our environment already. With almost a third of waste being uncollected in India, it has given rise to 1.5 million unsung heroes known as waste pickers, who work tirelessly to clean up their streets. The Body Shop Fair Trade partnership with Plastic for Change not only helps tackle the existing plastic problem, but also helps to support around 2,500 waste pickers, with access to more sanitary working conditions and a fair price for the plastic waste they collect.
Now, earlier in our session, we heard from Andrea, Alvares, Guilherme, Leal, Tasso, Azevedo on what it would take to tackle the climate crisis and protect the Amazon. We're now going to take a deeper dive into what a roadmap to protect biodiversity could look like. You'll hear more in this next session on how Natura & Co. is working with some of the leading organizations working to protect biodiversity as part of its commitment to life goals, and a big, bold idea on building an agreement on nature. So Marcelo, my friend, over to you to lead this discussion and introduce this incredible panel of experts.
Thank you so much, Char. The science is clear. We have 10 years to reverse the laws of biodiversity. As you have heard earlier today, Natura & Co. has committed to protect the Amazon and foster collective efforts to achieve net zero deforestation by 2025. It will not be easy. We will work with leading organizations, including those you will hear from today, to create robust science-based targets for biodiversity. Because without a bold plan to reverse nature loss, we will never achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. Today, there are no real incentives in place to bring life back. We need to build an agreement on nature, place value on biodiversity, incentivize nature-based solutions, and provide resources to traditional communities, the true guardians of the global common goods. Today is my absolute privilege and honor to introduce you to 4 leading experts with a clear vision on how business, governments, and society can work together to reverse the loss of nature. First, let me introduce you to Akanksha Khatri, Head of Nature and Biodiversity at the World Economic Forum, Head of Champions for Nature, a community of leaders disrupting business as usual to pave the way to a nature-positive global economy and halt nature loss by 2030. Florence Jantet is the Managing Director of One Planet to Biodiversity, or P2B, an international cross-sectorial business coalition initiated within French President Macron's One Planet Lab framework. The coalition works to drive transformational systemic change to protect and restore biodiversity within the value chains, engage institutional and financial decision makers, and promote policy recommendations for the 2021 COP15 framework. Rick Kuch-Luyenga leads the Union for Ethical Biotrade, a leading non-profit organization working to ensure that respect for people and biodiversity is a critical element in sourcing strategies of natural ingredients used in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, and food sectors. It supports and verifies companies' commitments to innovation and sourcing. Eva Zabay is the Executive Director of Business for Nature, a global coalition that brings together more than 50 business and conservation organizations and forward-thinking companies from all sectors, sizes, and geographies. Their current focus is to encourage the adoption of transformative post-2020 global biodiversity framework at COP15 later this year. Thank you all for joining us today. I know there are many business leaders listening in and who are keen to hear your insights. For those listening, please do remember to leave questions in the comment threads and our teams will collect them. So please, let me start to Akanksha. If you could please jump in first and tell us, how do you think we can build an agreement for nature?
Thank you, Marcelo. And I have to admit, even before I started, has been a super, super inspiring afternoon here for me. I almost had to pinch myself to believe that, am I really listening to a corporate or am I listening to someone who's really in it for the planet? But it seems like Natura can do both. So thanks for bringing all of us together for this important discussion on how can we build an agreement on nature. I could not agree more with what you had said. Is never before has the momentum for fighting climate change and halting biodiversity loss been stronger. And yet, never before has the pace of change somehow felt slower. We are standing at the tipping point of key planetary boundaries today. Over the past centuries, our economic model has assumed an infinite supply of natural resources and ecosystem services. But today, our demand of these resources has far outstripped the supply. So the time to act for the survival of humanity on this planet is now. But to arrive at a global agreement of nature, or in other words, how we protect, restore, and manage nature, needs a complete shift, such that nature is at the very heart of the decision-making, something that you and the rest of your colleagues have exemplified so brilliantly today. So building on everything we have heard so far, there are 3 points that I want to leave with everyone when thinking about a global goal for nature. One is that we fundamentally have to move away from an extractive to a regenerative business model. Anyone who's taken a basic economics course would know that when it comes to concerns related to environment, it is usually the last chapter in the book and is often labeled an externality. So we never look at it when we are calculating growth or when we are calculating progress. And yet we realize that everything that adds value in our life, in our well-being, is underpinned by nature. So think about food, water, air. We have depleted nature's bounty to such an extent that it is severely impacting how we produce food, live in cities with pollution, and drink water that is harmful. I'm sure Florence later will speak a little bit more to it, but we urgently need to move towards regenerative business models, price externalities in the good, and start paying the true cost of food, amongst other things. And what's important is that this is not at odds with business growth. I think Natura & Co has definitely exemplified that example. However, the WEF report, which released last year that Marcelo, you very kindly contributed to as well, identified that moving towards a nature-positive economy can create $10.1 trillion of business opportunities and 395 million jobs. So let's move towards an economy which is net zero, nature positive, because it's not at odds with jobs or growth. The second thing is, how do we ensure equity across countries and generations? Today, consumers in rich nations waste up to 115 kilograms of food per capita in a year. Now compare that to just 6 to 11 kilograms per capita in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. So there is definitely an issue in the way the benefits of great economic acceleration have been spread across the world. But it is not just about the developed versus developing countries. There is also the point of intergenerational justice, because everything that we overuse today, we will be doing it at the expense of the future generation. And the last point that I want to mention is something that Natura will be very actively contributing towards, is working towards an integrated agenda for nature and peace. We've often heard about 3 different Rio conventions on biodiversity, on climate change, and on desertification. What we need is to really come together for a one planet approach. And I'm delighted that the Champions for Nature community, which will be co-chaired by Roberto Marques in the next coming year, will be publishing an integrated narrative on how this one planet deserves a more integrated governance, so that things are not divided into silos. And I'm delighted that with you, with Roberto and other colleagues, we will be taking this narrative for the next year into Stockholm Plus 50, where we will mark 30 years of the Rio Conventions and 50 years of the first ever UN Convention on Environmental Governance. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Akanksha. Florence, can we hear about your initiatives on One Planet to Biodiversity to build an agreement on nature?
Yes, of course, Marcelo. Thanks, and hi, everyone. It's a little bit surprising, actually, to hear the question coming from you, how to build an agreement on nature when we've heard what we've heard this afternoon in such a panel. Is amazing. So you are very well on the road. But let me probably reaffirm for people listening here that there is no other choice. The math are not going to work. We have no other deal than to find an agreement on nature. What we have been doing here and hearing this afternoon is a transformation of the supply chain and the ingredients. And I think the agreement on nature is about talking about the transformation of the agriculture, being the small agriculture, being the large agriculture sectors that we have everywhere, including in the Amazon and much beyond. And it's about thinking differently from the past, where we have been taking for granted that we can just extract, as Akansha was just mentioning. This is over, and it's time for regenerative agriculture. It seems to be a very difficult concept, and it can be named in a very different manner. We can talk, and we've heard about some initiative on agroforestry, on agroecology. All that is the same idea, which is about what? Is about making sure that we restore the soil, or we keep the soil alive. We have been destroying too much. We have seen the impressive images that we've in the Amazon and beyond. The second thing is about what do we nurture, cultivate on this soil, which is the biodiversity that will provide nourishment to the soil, but nourishment and ingredients for all of us, for beauty, for feeding ourselves, for our clothes for the future, and so on. And this biodiversity is also very important, not only on the field, but around the field. And this will provide the ecosystems which are necessary if we want to transform this agriculture. And nothing will happen without the farmers at the center. We heard about the indigenous communities. They are farmers as well. They are very, very important stakeholders that we need to bring at the core. And this is what regenerative business or regenerative agriculture is about. So it's about for the companies to reinvent their relation through their ingredients and specification on the way they design their product, as we heard as well, and that you are doing beautifully in the demonstration we have this afternoon. So reinventing the supply chain, reinventing the ingredients, where they do come from and who are the people behind. And this is what we are trying to do together at OP2B, One Planet Business for Biodiversity, because we cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone at Natura, and you have been through a journey by demultiplying what you have been doing as Natura to the other brands, and this is a fantastic journey. It is about engaging everyone in the company to make it happen, and is extremely challenging because it has, of course, challenge for the R&D, for the design, for the purchasing, and it's about doing it with partners, and it can be competitors. In OP2B, we have Natura, but we have also L'Oréal, and we have luxury goods, and we have the food industry, because at the end of the day, it's about a systemic change and approach of a landscape that we have to address. So to build an agreement on nature is about thinking the way we manage together as business as well with partner a landscape for a better future. The way to do it is together. We are super proud to have Natura as a leading company in this company belonging to OP2B. So thanks for that. And please continue to show the way to your peers and colleagues as well, because what you are doing together is just amazing.
Thank you so much, Florence. Really, deeply thanks. And our founders and our CEOs always say that on things like environment and nature, there is no competition. We are all together on the same journey. Rick, you represent one of the institutions that we, Natura, helped to found, and we've been on this path for quite a long way. Union for Ethical Biotrade, please tell us a little bit, how do you foresee shaping an agreement for nature? And if you could please give us some examples on other companies and other practices that you see that are going on the same direction that could benefit everyone.
Thank you so much, Marcelo, for the opportunity to contribute. And indeed, About 15 years ago, a group of visionary companies, including Natura, came together and created a UBT to promote ethical sourcing of biodiversity. And since then, we've been working very hard to promote biodiversity and to convince companies to take action. And I must admit, it's been a rather big challenge. It's not been easy. Right now, we see quite a lot of interest, a lot of movement, and that's very, very exciting. And I think there is a recognition, a belated recognition, that biodiversity is really at the core of the business, something that Natura, through the Acres line, for example, already realized a long time ago. But indeed, a lot needs to be done. More needs to be done, and a global agreement for nature, I think, is very, very much needed. But because we shouldn't forget that this is not the first agreement. There was an agreement set in 2010, and in that agreement, there were targets set for 2020, and hardly any of those targets were actually met. And I think that shows two things that we should take into account. On the one hand, we need stronger commitments, we need better targets, and we need buy-in from all the stakeholders, including the private sector. But I think the second thing is that we need implementation. That's really what it's about. And Marcelo, this sector that we are working in, there's quite still some challenges. There are still challenges in knowing where different ingredients are coming from. There's many different ingredients that we're working with. Traceability is still a challenge. And if there's no real traceability, it's difficult to know the precise action. So you cannot work on reducing negative impact, but then also we cannot even start thinking about regenerative or being nature positive. So it's a tall order. And I think for an agenda to be adopted, we need, I think, two things. One is the agenda needs to kind of allow and promote the companies to mainstream biodiversity, really look at all different activities. And the second is that we need to look at biodiversity and people at the same time. And I think Jeanette mentioned it, and also the commitment to life shows it. People are working with biodiversity. It's finally the farmers, the cooperative, the wild collectors, all of those people that will need to make it happen, that will need to receive a decent pay, a decent price, and need support to change the practices. And I think Natura & Co. in that sense has a number of very excellent examples. That we saw the example of Aesop with Dujan, with sandalwood. We have, of course, the Natura examples with the cooperatives in the Amazon, but probably less known is the work that you're doing with alcohol, which is probably regenerative already. The Body Shop with the community training program. So there's examples out there, very good examples. But what we need is upscaling. We need significant upscaling, and for that, we need partnerships with suppliers, competitors, NGOs, and I hope that the nature agenda can facilitate that, and that it can really offer something that we can all rally behind, because we need to step up. There's a lot of work to be done, and I think you're showing that it is possible. We just need to find a way to step up and to scale up.
Thank you so much, Rick. Well, now we have Eva, who's leading one of the initiatives that we really place high expectations on, building an agreement for nature. So Business for Nature is really dedicated to it. Eva, how do you see companies and business building an agreement for nature?
Thanks so much, Marcelo. Listening to today and listening to just this panel, I was wondering if it's possible to over-congratulate a company like Natura. But given that you're all so humble as well, which is a little bit, annoying practically. No, it's not true. You're all very humble, and you absolutely deserve it, because as Charmian was saying at the beginning, it takes courage to be a leader, and especially a bold leader. So thank you to Natura & Co. for being one of the leaders in Business for Nature since the start. We need the leadership, but we also need the momentum. We need the evidence that companies, hundreds and thousands of companies, are now urging governments to adopt policies now. And through Business for Nature and all of our partners, we're starting to see that. We now have more than 900 companies that are urging governments to adopt policies now to reverse nature loss in this decade. And so the global agreement I'm going to talk about is, in fact, the Convention on Biological Diversity. The framework is called the Post-2020 global biodiversity framework. It just rolls off the tongue. But think of it like this. It's basically the equivalent of the Paris Agreement on Climate from 2015, but for nature and biodiversity. And just like with climate, we needed that leading progressive business voice to give the policymakers the courage and comfort to adopt an agreement. Governments need to adopt this transformative framework. And the reason for that for business is it will give certainty to companies to invest, to innovate, to shift their business models. And so one of the things we're busy doing is trying to work with the CBD process and the negotiators to get into the details of what needs to change in the current drafts to make it that much more actionable and ambitious. And that includes something really important, which is adopting a mission to halt and reverse nature loss by 2030, meaning we need to become nature positive by 2030. We need to be sure about the role business can play. We need to make sure, as Rick was talking about, we've mainstreamed the value of biodiversity in decision-making and disclosure. Importantly, we need to make sure we have the resources, and that's not just coming from business and finance. We're talking about that really thorny, uncomfortable shift in the financial system, the fact of eliminating harmful subsidies and redirecting them to really be on, as Akanksha was saying, this nature positive economy, which brings so much opportunity. And I would just, like to end by saying, I guess, that when we think about the externalities that Akanksha was saying, an externality is just an impact that is waiting to be internalized. So if you're prepared for the future, you will understand not only how you've optimized as a company on financial performance, but natural and social performance too. So well done, that's what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you all for being such a wonderful speakers today. If anyone wants to find more about their organizations, please visit naturanco.com/commitment to life. After the event, we have the link for each one of the organizations and the main initiatives that they have. So thank you so much for your presence here with us today. It really meant a lot to us. And now I'd like to hand back to Roberto Marques, Executive Chairman and Group CEO, for final thoughts. Thank you.
Over the last 18 months or so, the world has been dealing with a devastating global pandemic. An important reminder to all of us of how things are interconnected, interdependent, and the importance of multilateral collaboration among nations, public and private sector, academia, scientific community, NGOs, and society in general. In regard to the climate crisis and reversing nature loss, this call to action is even more pressing. To achieve a net zero in a nature positive economy, we still have a long way to go. We need to foster broader partnerships, fund breakthrough innovation that creates positive impact, embrace science-based targets, develop a clear framework with common metrics and indicators, and drive transparency with clear incentive mechanisms, resource allocation, and accountability. I hope that what you take away from today's sessions is that the change is achievable if we work together. And now it's not the time to compete. It's time to collaborate for change. You heard today in our first panel what it will take to tackle deforestation, an enormous collective effort that we and Natura & Co are committed to fully engage. We will not rest until we have helped building solutions to protect the forest. We will be sharing more details on that in our upcoming earnings announcement in August. Now, it is the time to foster creativity and innovation. It is imperative that we come together to foster nature-based solutions. Natura's agroforestry system for palm oil in the Amazon was created to tackle the devastation of monoculture farming. We need many more solutions like this, solutions that will help the forest and its people survive and thrive. You heard from Paula Fallowfield and Jade Fraser from Natura & Co HR team on our commitment to reflect the fabric of the societies we operate in order to ensure we are inclusive of underrepresented groups. And from my dear colleague, the CEO at United Global Compact, Sanda Ojiambo, thank you so very much on what every business can be doing to ensure diversity and inclusion in their organizations. With our expert panelists on biodiversity told us was that without securing an agreement on nature, we'll never achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, nor will revert the loss of nature. As we approach COP15 on biodiversity and COP26, we at Natura & Co will commit to use our resources to help an agreement for nature become a reality, in order to advance from only doing regenerative good and towards bringing back life. When it comes to regeneration, it won't be the burden of just a few companies willing to take a risk. It is going to take every company in every country. In order for us to make a transformational shift from a linear economy to a circular economy, we need consumers to join us. Because let's remember that every customer is a citizen with the power to be conscious of the choices they make, who they buy from, and why. As a direct-to-consumer company, we talk to more than 200 million people almost daily, a growing number of whom are deeply concerned about their future and their children's future. Each and every one of them has the potential to be an advocate for a fairer, more sustainable world, and we are committed to take them on this journey with us. I want to share our gratitude on behalf of everyone at Natura & Co. Thank you to everyone who joined us to listen in on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I also want to thank Chairman Love, who did such a tremendous job navigating us through our Commitment to Life journey. And of course, a huge thank to you, to our incredible speakers and panelists for the inspiring insights and their challenges to us to think differently about this radical transformation we need to make in order to keep our planet safe. No one entity can solve the climate crisis, but if we pull together as businesses and society as a whole, I think we can get there. Before we close today, we'll welcome the opportunity to answer any questions you might have about what you heard. You can post your questions in comments, and our moderators behind the scenes will channel them to both Marcelo and Chairman and some of our speakers. So we look forward to hearing from you. Marcelo and Chairman, let's open the floor to questions.
Wow. Well, thank you, Roberto. We have certainly seen a range of amazing comments and questions being shared on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube throughout this event today. So thank you so much to everybody for listening and so actively contributing to this conversation. Today, our audience is truly international. Our questions have come in from around the world, including UK, Brazil, US, Canada, Sweden, Colombia, the Netherlands, and India. Now, we have some of our speakers on standby right now to answer some of your questions. So I say, let's begin. Let's see what our first question is. Let's see, I think it's coming up just right now. First question comes in from Carla via Facebook. Carla says, congratulations for the event. How will the work with local communities be aimed at this regeneration and circularity? What a great question, Carla. Marcelo, what do you think? Who should take this first question?
So, Char, I think everything in sustainability is interlinked, right? So there is a great connection between circularity and our communities. I think Silvia maybe could jump in and talk a little bit further on the connection that we have between the work that we do with communities, and circularity. Silvia, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Nobody can see me, it seems.
We can hear you well.
So do I go without my face?
I think so.
Perfect. So we go without face. You're missing it. So sorry. So great, Marcelo. So look, I think the nice way to tackle this one is to remind ourselves of the targets that we have. So I'll just give you 3 examples on circularity and regeneration. We want to go from around 89% on natural renewable ingredients to over 95%. We're already at 89. We want to get to 95% or more biodegradable. And we want to go from the 7% that we have now on post-consumer recycled content to 50%. So these are just examples of how we measure circularity. And I think all the work that we do, whether it's in Australia with sourcing sandalwood, whether it's at scale with Natura in Latin America sourcing significant amounts from the Amazon, or the example that we had Roberto talk about, the Body Shop, but more specifically, 1/3 already of all our plastic is coming from communities on the plastic for change work. So all those initiatives working directly with local communities and sourcing totally renewable, natural, biodegradable, or plastic for our PCR content, post-consumer recycled. They're all examples of working with communities to advance on our goals. And then obviously the most exciting, and I think the final panel on truly regenerative solutions, where we actually put back in nature more than we take. You know, if we can scale up the agroforestry project, for example, on staff, on palm, to be, you know, a thing that we do with communities in the deforested areas in the Amazon, that's huge, and that is then truly regenerative, i.e., you know, taking carbon out, or at a basic level, as we already do with the Amazon, as we source from the communities in the Amazon, several communities already, as I said, a huge amount of the Natura products, that's stopping like 2 million hectares, and we're going for 3 million hectares of being deforested. So that is also making a huge contribution to regeneration. So I apologize for the video not being there, but I thought that those would be examples that will help illustrate why we're so passionate about working with the local communities.
It's great. I tell you, we can hear the energy in your voice, and I think it was a great answer to a really great question. So thank you. Let's see, what's the next question that we have coming up? I think, oh, here we go. Catherine through LinkedIn is asking, how are we addressing the humanitarian crisis concerning COVID in Brazil? Marcelo, who would you think would be great to answer this particular question?
Yeah, so the whole world felt the effects of the COVID crisis and the pandemic. And as we operate in over 100 countries, we also felt that very intensely throughout our business. And our core market is Brazil. So maybe I would call Roberto to come and talk a little bit on everything that we have been doing on those markets, especially in Brazil during COVID. Roberto, please.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Listen, first of all, I think we all need to acknowledge that we're still not over with this global pandemic. And unfortunately, we are seeing still a lot of inequality in terms of how some of the developed markets are with levels of vaccination much well above some of the developing markets. It is something that I believe the world still needs to act diligently to make sure that we bring more equality in terms of how we are really creating immunization to actually fight this still very ongoing global pandemic. Brazil was one of the countries most impacted by it, unfortunately. Natura & Co, from the beginning, we put people first in terms of donation of products, in terms of contributing to our networks of consultants, representatives, supporting some of the campaigns. Behar mentioned Isolated Not Alone. On and on, we invest probably over 100 million reais. But the money in itself, it doesn't tell the whole story. I mean, it is important that we continue to work with private sector, with government, with the scientific community, with the doctors, to make sure that we can continue to make progress against this virus.
Well, thank you, Roberto, and thank you, Catherine, for such an important question. Let's see, what other questions do we have coming in through LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube? All right, here we go. Marcella through LinkedIn asks, in reference to the 30% diversity target, would this include underrepresented suppliers? Marcelo.
So that's a very good question, Cami, which allow us to talk a little bit more about our commitments on inclusion and diversity. And I think there is no one better than our Chief Human Resources Officer, Paula Fallowfield, to come and run a little bit through all the material categories that we see on underrepresentation and that we want to include. Those are mostly for our network at the beginning, so we're including first the ones that work with us. But Paula, can you run a little bit through all the elements that we are talking when we talk about diversity? I think it would be really helpful for everyone to listen to you. Thank you so much, Paula.
Not at all. It's great to be here. Charmian, I don't know if I can match your energy levels with this question, but I'm going to give it a try because I think you're keeping everybody hanging on in there for the full 2 hours of this podcast. Look, it's a super question, right? And it's a super challenge. I think, Marcelo, you know, we've got to challenge enough of our own to get this in our own network. And we're really excited to try to conquer that challenge. We're doing well on the gender balance, but on the underrepresented, we've got a little bit of work to do. And even getting that data, Jade explained earlier, even getting that data across markets due to all the data privacy is really challenging for us. But we're getting there. We're working through that. We're working through each and every market separately to understand what we can and cannot do. Now, our relationship with our partners and our suppliers is improving all the time. And I think, you know, you heard from Catherine in Australia, you heard from, you know, Mark and a lot of our other presenters here about the work we're doing on our supply chain. We're building great relationships with them. So we've started in a small way with some of those relationships to share with them our commitments. And in turn, they're mirroring those where they can. So they're saying, hey, we can live up to that one with you. We'll work hard on that as well. We haven't got it as a main requirement, but it's our goal to try and continue to build towards that and drive it. So as much as we can share our commitments with our partners, the better off we're going to do in replicating and building a global initiative. So it's not our own responsibility, but we're going to do as best we can to influence and motivate everyone to jump on the bandwagon.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And Marcelo, thank you for such a thoughtful question. All right, let's see. I think we've got some more questions coming in. All right, this one is from Cecile through LinkedIn. Cecile asks, what sustainability accounting does Natura & Co. use to measure its non-financial disclosure? This is often a question to validate reported results. All right, what do you think, Marcelo?
So Natura was a pioneer in the Southern Hemisphere on delivering the GRI standards. So we've been working on multiple results for many years, and one of our specialists was with us today, and I asked my good friend Keyvan to be back with us so he can take this question. Keyvan, please.
Yeah, nice question indeed. So as Marcelo mentioned, we have this approach to report by the annual report, using not only and to disclosure not only the financial information, but also the environmental and social information. So we have this integrated management report, all the earnings results. We disclose not only the financial performance, but also the social and economic performance and environmental performance that we have. And with Natura, we have started since 2014 what we call the Environmental Profit and Loss Project. And by this year, we are expanding this to what we are calling the integrated profit and loss, that we are not only going to count the environmental dimensions, but also the social dimension. What is the legacy that we are delivering to the society, considering our business model?
Great answer. I know we have only got a few minutes left, so I think we are going to try and sneak in a few more questions, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see, what next one do we have coming up here? Vanessa through LinkedIn. Vanessa asks, how about the urban areas in the Amazon region?
Yeah, it's a great question, Char, because, you know, we always think about the Amazon with its beautiful nature and its contribution to carbon biodiversity, but we do have 28 million people living only in Brazil. So maybe my good friend Andrea could join us, and Andrea is leading the program on the Amazon. And Andrea, what do you think we can say about initiatives that we have on the urban areas of the Amazon?
Hi, Marcelo. Hi, Char. Great question, especially because the growth of the urban population in the Amazon region has really amplified significantly in the past decades. In our case, we are focused on the developing of production and supply chains, mostly outside of the urban areas. What we have done, however, is after the Amazon program was created in 2011, in 2014, we opened operations in the municipality of Benevides in the state of Pará. It's in the large metropolitan area of Belém. And that's where we have invested all of our efforts in terms of job creation, professional development, science development with our scientists that are based in that region. And so that is what we have done. In addition to that, we've got in the development hubs for the social biodiversity chains. In those, some of them touch urban areas, even in other states of the Amazon. And when we do the institutional and the sustainable development territory programs, we also touch on urban population development.
Wonderful. What do we think? I think, Vanessa, that was a really, really wonderful question. Do we have time for one more? What do we think? I'm getting the thumbs up. One more question here as we head towards the top of the hour. All right. Evelyn from Facebook asks, how are you planning to engage your suppliers in these actions? Will there be a call to action? Do you intend for oleochemical suppliers to use Natura palm oil? What do you think, Marcelo? Who's best for this question?
So there are, as we always say, Natura is built over the work of 40,000 people nowadays, Natura & Co. So there are many who are not present today, but contribute to that. And one of them is our great colleague, Mark Davis, who is connected to us today. And Mark is responsible for sustainable supply. Mark, can you help us with the answer to this question?
It'll be a real pleasure. I'd get to be the last person as well, get the last word. So yes, of course, suppliers are absolutely critical to our business. They provide us with the goods, the services, and of course, really around sustainability, the innovation we need to deliver our commitments. So although, and we've heard a lot today about us leading by example, we really need our suppliers to come on the journey with us, be that around net zero, diversity in communities or within their businesses, and absolutely when it comes to those sustainable ingredients. So what have we been doing up to now? Why have we not been calling on them? Well, we're trying to, as you've heard with a lot of people, get hold of the numbers, make sure we know exactly where our impacts are, prioritise. We're then going to do a big call out to them. We're definitely going to need partnerships with the really critical suppliers. And yes, we've been working with suppliers all along around oleochemicals and palm. And as we grow those agroforestry projects, we're absolutely going to want some of those suppliers to come on the journey with us as well. So yes, please, if there's any on the call, we need them to contact us.
Excellent. Well, I can't imagine a better note to end this on. And I just need to say, this has been just such an incredible, powerful 2 hours. Thank you so much to all the presenters and the panelists today for your amazing insights and the openness on both the progress as well as the challenges that you're facing. To everyone that's tuned in, please remember to share what you think in the comments box below, because our hope is that we can really keep this conversation flowing. Now, I'd like to bring us back to where we started with those 3 C's. And I hope, like me, you're all feeling courageous, you're feeling compassionate, and you're feeling deeply committed. Because on this last C, let's remember those 3 commitments to life. It's to address the climate crisis and protect the Amazon. It is to defend human rights and be humankind. And it is to embrace circularity and regeneration. So thank you again. And let's feel the inspiration from today and move from talk to action. Thank you.
We are Natura & Co. 4 brands, Avon, Natura, The Body Shop, and Aesop. 4 brands united in our commitment to life, who believe that we should all give back more than we take. 4 brands that know that the best business in the world is the one that is best for it. Because this planet and its people are suffering. Disease and drought, pollution and poverty. Humanity has stretched nature too far and demanded too much. It's time to stop talking and start acting. It's time to commit to life. To not just stop deforestation, but reverse it. To not just be carbon neutral, but net zero. To go beyond human rights and practice human kindness. To breathe life back into the lungs of the world and save the Amazon. To not just recycle, but regenerate. To come together for change. Because when we act as one, we act for us all. This is our commitment to life.